Sanctuary policies are often pitched as this compassionate solution, a way to protect vulnerable communities. But what happens when those policies seem to cost American lives?
Well, that's the tragic conflict Congress just dove into. We've been looking at the sources from this really charged congressional hearing.
Yeah, this was the one focused on what they called reckless and dangerous sanctuary policies.
Exactly. In states led by governors like Pritzker in Illinois, Walz in Minnesota, and Hochul in New York.
So our mission for this deep dive is to get into that raw testimony. We're not here to take a side, but to really unpack the tension. We're looking at the claims that these policies led directly to, well, major public safety failures.
And we have to contrast that with the governor's defense. They came back hard, attacking federal immigration enforcement, ICE.
The hearing got started right away with the human cost of all this. It wasn't abstract.
Not at all. It immediately focused on the tragic case of a 20-year-old named Katie Abraham in Illinois. She was killed by a man who'd already been deported once before.
And that case, it just sets the stakes for this entire debate.
It really does.
So let's focus on that case, because it really defines the severity of the problem the committee was trying to highlight.
The story of Katie Abraham.
Yeah. She was killed in this horrific crash in Illinois, and the testimony said she was struck by a previously deported illegal alien.
Who was also allegedly drunk driving.
At nearly 80 miles per hour.
At 80. It's an unbelievable speed. And it wasn't just a collision. He then fled the scene.
He fled the scene, and then the sources say he fled the state entirely before federal marshals finally caught up with him.
Which gave Republicans on the committee their central argument, that this man, quote, should never have been here in the first place.
They called it a catastrophic betrayal of public safety.
And you can understand why when you hear from Katie's father, Joe Abraham, his testimony was just powerful.
It wasn't just grief, was it? It felt like a political indictment.
Completely. He accused Governor Pritzker of indifference. He said the governor sees his daughter's death as just collateral damage to his extreme policy.
Wow. And he even gave a reason, saying the governor needs warm bodies in the state. That's an extraordinary thing to say.
It's an incredible claim that a policy is being valued more than a citizen's life. And what's really stark is the political response.
How so?
Well, you have this gut-wrenching testimony from Mr. Abraham. But then the very next day, Governor Walz testifies in defense of these sanctuary policies.
And he doesn't mention her.
Not publicly. He offered private condolences, but in his public testimony defending the very policies in question, there was no acknowledgement of her death.
And at the same time, those same politicians are expressing, intense outrage over federal enforcement actions.
Right. It reinforces the conservative critique that there's a very selective outrage at play here. The focus only seems to be on citizen safety when federal law is being enforced, not when it's being obstructed.
So this brings us to the mechanics. How do these policies actually work? I mean, what are local police actually refusing to do?
It really boils down to ICE administrative warrants and detainers. That's the key.
Okay, so explain that difference. A detainer versus, say, a judicial warrant.
A judicial warrant is an order from a judge. It's based on probable cause. Police must obey it. But an ICE detainer is different. It's just a request.
A request to do what?
To hold a suspect for an extra 48 hours after they'd normally be released. It just gives ICE agents enough time to get there and take custody.
So if it's just a request, what's the legal justification these governors give for ignoring it, even when it involves someone violent?
Well, that's the core of their defense. They argue that holding someone based only on an administrative request without a judge signing off violates the Fourth Amendment.
The protection against unreasonable seizures.
Exactly. They say if ICE wants someone, they need to get a proper judicial warrant. They also argue that local police shouldn't be doing the work of federal immigration enforcement.
And the hearing detailed some pretty chilling examples of where that choice leads.
It does. I mean, look at the case of Jesus Romero Hernandez in New York. Tompkins County had him in custody.
And what was he accused of?
He allegedly assaulted a resident with a machete, choked a police officer, and assaulted corrections officers.
So a clearly violent individual, and they wouldn't honor the detainer.
They wouldn't. ICE told the county they were on their way to pick him up that evening. They had an active federal arrest warrant, but the county released him.
How long would they have had to wait?
1 hour and 18 minutes. The county said they, quote, could not wait 1 hour and 18 minutes.
Wow.
So he was let go. 1 hour stood between a violent offender and federal custody.
And the sources pointed to other cases, right, to show this wasn't just a one-off.
Yeah, they cited the rape of a 15-year-old girl in Albany by an illegal migrant. and a Chicago businessman who was beaten to death by 2 migrant men. Critics say these are the direct, inevitable results of the policy.
And it's not just citizens who are at risk, it's the federal agents themselves.
That's a huge point. Chairman Comer brought up a statistic from Homeland Security.
What was it?
A 413% rise in assaults on ICE agents.
413%. That is staggering. How is that connected?
Because when local jails won't hold a suspect, ICE agents have to go find them out on the street or in a home. It's a much more dangerous, uncontrolled environment than a secure jail.
So the non-cooperation directly puts federal officers in more danger.
That's the argument, that the rhetoric from governors, plus the policies, creates this hostile environment that leads to more violence against federal officers.
So it's clear these policies have just a terrible human cost. But the critics also argue they create these huge financial and strategic problems for the states.
Right, that they basically act as magnets.
Yeah.
And the Republican goal stated at the hearing was pretty clear.
Which is what?
To stop, quote, every single penny of federal dollars going to cities and states that prioritize criminal illegal aliens over the American people.
So using federal funding as leverage.
Exactly. The argument is if you won't cooperate with federal law, you don't get federal tax dollars.
And the sources presented evidence that the financial burden on taxpayers in these states is already pretty significant.
Absolutely. They cited data showing illegal immigration costs Illinois families over $780 per family per year.
$780.
Per family. And Governor Pritzker's administration was getting hammered for using state money for services for illegal aliens at the same time that actual Illinois citizens are leaving the state.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, the security risks cited were pretty grave.
The numbers are alarming. Customs and Border Patrol reported 736 encounters with illegal aliens who have ties to terrorist organizations.
736 in just fiscal year 2023.
Just in that 1 year. And beyond that, DHS identified over 400 migrants who were smuggled into the U.S. by an ISIS-affiliated smuggling network.
So the argument is that when local officials obstruct ICE, they might not just be protecting a neighbor, they could be shielding someone with ties to a global terror network.
That's the national security threat they laid out, that these policies are a direct impediment to vetting and removing known risks.
And this is where the politics just reached a boiling point. I mean, the language used by Governors Walz and Pritzker was intense.
Very. They repeatedly called ICE agents and their tactics the modern-day Gestapo.
Which is incredibly inflammatory language.
It is, and Governor Walz actually defended it. He talked about ICE using unmarked vans and wearing masks. He framed it as a denial of due process.
So they're trying to portray federal enforcement as this, cruel authoritarian force.
It's a political strategy to deflect from the consequences of their own policies by attacking the method of federal enforcement.
But critics just keep pointing back to cases like Jesus Romero Hernandez.
Right. How can you say public safety is your top priority when you won't wait 78 minutes for a federal warrant on a machete assault suspect?
The Republican counter is that this isn't about safety, it's about a political stance.
Their position is pretty simple. Secure the border and let ICE do its job of deporting criminal illegal aliens. They say these states are creating a crisis that doesn't need to exist.
They also push back on the idea that Congress needs to pass new laws before anything can be done.
Correct. They made the claim that President Trump secured the border without new legislation, which kind of rebuts the whole idea that we have to wait for a new bill to pass.
So the demand is for a return to common sense and for governors to, quote, put America first.
To prioritize their own citizens over these policy fights.
Okay, so let's try to sum this up. We've seen that non-cooperation comes at just a direct and undeniable cost. To citizen safety, like with Katie Abraham, to the safety of ICE agents, and even to state budgets and national security.
And we've also examined the policy choice the governors are making. They're prioritizing arguments about civil liberties and community trust over cooperating with federal law. Critics see them as being willing to risk citizen lives for a political agenda, which leaves you, the voter, with a real choice.
And I guess that brings us to our final thought.
It does. The sources present this really stark question. If leaders view the preventable death of a 20-year-old American citizen as acceptable collateral damage for a policy, the question for every resident in those states becomes pretty clear.
What level of accountability should voters demand at the next ballot box?